What's up, my basic family? We're here with another episode of Christian Campfire Conversations. My name is Max Moore. If you forgot after this, however long, and I got my co-host Keegan Lowen. Keegan, what's going on?
Not much. Yes, it has been way too long, but we're back now, and we're planning to stay back for a while. But yeah,
Yeah.
we're gonna just talk. We're gonna talk about some of what God has been teaching us in this time where we've taken a break from putting out new content and yeah. So, but we had to start with something a little bit more fun. So let me think about a question. Unless you think of one first.
Okay.
Hmm.
Well, I cannot believe Keegan said he's like, "Hey, I'll think of a subject we could talk about," and he didn't do that. And then he's like, "Throw me," he's like, "Oh, let me think of a question that we can ask." So Keegan's kind of dropping the ball, actually. Just kidding. Just kidding. Keegan, you're the best co-host ever.
But
Most of the
yeah,
time.
the only one ever. But yeah. Um. This is gonna be kind of basic, but this is all I can really comes to mind.
Mm-hmm.
So if money and you're gonna be a pastor, so maybe money isn't a factor, but sorry. But if money wasn't a factor, what other career would you do? Money and practicality weren't a factor. Just what other career would be like what you would pursue full time?
Well, there was like this quote that Pastor Tim told me. He said, "If you can see yourself doing another job besides the pastorate or ministry in general, go do that job because ministry's hard." And so, to be honest with you, I don't know if I could see myself doing a job long term that isn't ministry.
Mm-hmm.
But if I like had to, um, it'd probably be a storm chaser. To be honest, you would have never guessed that, but that's actually what I would choose, just because it's fun, it's exciting. That or a motocross racer. If I was like, is skill an issue too? Like, do I have
No,
to be
skill's
really
not
good
an
at
issue.
something?
Like
Okay,
like
cool.
practicality, yeah, that kind of falls under that umbrella.
Okay, gotcha. Because like I'm obviously not good enough to be a motocross racer,
No.
but if I had the chance, I wouldn't do it. But if I couldn't be in ministry, that's what I would do. So
Right. Like, yeah, you just like decide to just be a bachelor for the rest of your life. Such a bachelor, just eat casseroles all day and
yeah, pretty much. So
then that would be okay. That would be the path you take. Okay. Um,
what about
I,
you?
um,
Oh, let me guess. Let me guess. Actually, before you say, let me guess.
okay.
Insurance agent.
Oh, right. Yeah. That's my dream. That's, I came out of the womb as soon as I could talk, which, was a surprisingly early time because I was a little bit of a child prodigy. That is totally a joke, but the first thing I said is insurance. Like that was my first words. Uh, Always wanted to be one. That just doesn't happen. But I uh, probably would either be a like professional golfer because skill is not an issue, or like a professional drummer, like just playing drums. Uh,
That would actually be. I could
and
see
and
that.
like that is something that's totally practical. I could not currently, but like put in
Yeah, you
enough,
could get
given
there.
enough effort, I could get there. Like I've played
Yeah.
for a long time, but it's more of a time thing right now than a skill or willingness thing. So maybe somewhere down the road, that's what I'll start doing. But I'll be fine for I'll be fine for now. Not just playing in challenge.
Oh yeah, you'll be content.
Yeah, content. That's good.
Yeah, that's good. So, with 2 months to the day was the last time we recorded. We recorded on Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard, that kind of thing. Um, that has kind of gone in the back of my mind. I don't remember a whole lot, so I was like, "There's no way I can do another episode on Scientology." I could, and in the summertime when I was researching it a little bit more, but I don't think I can right now. So, Key and I were discussing what we're going to talk about today, and we just kind of talk, what is God teaching us right now? And so I guess you'll go first.
Oh yeah, I will.
Yeah,
um, so yeah, it's
you're
been
good. I got
like
my mic off right now. Oh,
um, so it's been a good experience, just like being able to take some time away from the podcast, just simply because it I didn't realize how much time it was actually going to take up. Uh, and it got to being draining for a bit, but like it's something that takes a lot more work than people see and behind the scenes. So it was nice, but that wasn't with the long term plan. So currently, like what I've been studying, reading through is the book of Acts. And so getting to see how God worked in the early church. And it's just really amazing to me to see how he used different people to um, grow his church. And I also, before that, was in Hebrews, um, where where the author of Hebrews, which we're not really sure who it is talking about bringing the gospel to these Jewish people and how the law was necessary, but it wasn't. It could never fulfill everything like we have in a savior with Jesus. Like that was the final payment for our sins, and so we don't need to. We're no longer under the law. We can follow God, and we don't have to follow these old Jewish customs. But more recently in Acts, I'm just getting to the part where Paul, Saul at the time. There's kind of some confusion about how that all happened, but so Saul has basically sees this bright light, and God Himself talks to Saul and converts Saul, who was a man who, not sure on the exact timeline, but just a short period of time before, was approving of and a part of stoning Stephen uh, for sharing the gospel. And God used Saul, this awful person who persecuted Christians, who was ravaging the church, as it says in Acts, and He's going to start to use him more in Acts. But also, then it just shows all the other different people all throughout Acts um, who God was using to be courageous, and share the gospel in really uncomfortable circumstances, going into different synagogues where uh, the overwhelming opinion was against them, but then getting to see some of the fruits of their labor of thousands of people at a time coming to Christ, being convicted and coming to Christ. Uh, and then one last thing I'll add is they all knew that preaching that and saying all of that was going to be a risk to their lives, but nonetheless, all of them continued to do it. And yeah, it just is kind of eye opening to me, of the reasons I will talk myself out of having a just even one spiritual conversation with somebody. And these people were having those conversations with thousands of people. Their life was at risk, and they were faithful to God through all of that.
well, there's quite a bit there.
Yeah,
Um, no, that's really good though. Acts is really good. You're thinking of it's the stoning of Stephen in Acts chapter 7, um, and then in Acts 8 verse 1 it says and Saul approved of their killing him, and then Acts 8 verse 3, but Saul began to destroy the church. So Saul, now we know as Paul, was destroying the church. And so that was just like where you were talking about, just so for our audience to kind of know, to go fact check us about where we're at in scripture. But no, all that is good. Acts is a wonderful narrative about the early church. And yeah, like you said, thinking through of like, hey, they went and they preached the gospel, through persecution. I'm in intro to missions class this 8 weeks, and one of the questions that he asked us, like the last class period, was, have we made an idol of safety? And thinking through that and thinking, hey, I'm uncomfortable even having a conversation in a free country where I'm allowed to do that, because I feel maybe uncomfortable with someone disagreeing with me. And we read about these guys who were knowingly going to preach a gospel to people that hated them, knowing that there was a pretty good chance that they were going to be, persecuted, whether that be, physically, or they were going to get kicked out, or they were going to get thrown in prison, whatever that was. They knew that. And, how am I go up to my neighbor and go share the gospel with them?
Yeah, for sure. Like that's it's something that totally puts it into perspective. We do have some form of, I maybe even struggle to call it persecution because it's really not that, but there is in certain situations in our culture where there's pushback to our beliefs as Christians, and but nothing. It's a totally different fear. What we're fearing is like fear of rejection. Like, okay, most of us, our family still accepts us, right? We're still accepted into our family. Like for those of us who were raised in a Christian family, like all of our family shares very similar beliefs to us. Most of our friends then share similar beliefs. I'll speak for a lot of Christian guys. Where I find most of my friends is at Christian events. And so a lot of my friends, so they're still going to support me. Like we are scared of like losing influence with someone who we don't even know. It's not that it's insignificant, but it's so small. These people were risking their lives. There's even some speculation. This is not like very clear in the Bible, but there's been some speculation that Paul actually had to leave his family, or like they completely disowned him when he started preaching the gospel. We don't know that to be the fact. It doesn't specifically say that, but there are some things that point to that. So but then also just the fear of, or the reality that they could be put to death for the very things that they're saying. That's a fear that more than likely we'll never have to see.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly right. And in that class, I began to kind of press my professor a little bit, thinking through that kind of persecution aspect of it, because I can't remember exactly how he said it, but you know, um, when it's easy, we get basically apathetic. We don't do anything, And then I kind of asked him, I was like, well, should we, based on that logic, because our faith is easy, should we hope for persecution so it proves our faith genuine? And he answered very well. He said, Christians in other countries pray for the American church to experience persecution. And I said, should we join in on those prayers? And he said, he basically didn't. I can't remember exactly what he said. He said like no comment or something, kind of like that. Or he kind of just shrugged and said that. But I think that's interesting, and it's something that's I've been learning about right now, that God's been um, teaching me, is about suffering, how to suffer well, how to suffer, and it being growth to God. Um, and so, kind of like a verse that kind of hits on the point that we're talking about here with persecution, and then also with suffering. 1 Peter 1:6 and 7, it says, "In all this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while you may have had to suffer grief in all kinds of trials. These have come so that the proven genuineness of your faith, of greater worth than gold, which perishes, even though refined by fire, may result in praise, glory, and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed. So that's kind of a neat verse there. That hey, because like these people that Peter was writing to, um, he was writing um, to the Jewish Christians driven out of Jerusalem and scattered throughout Asia Minor. So these guys are experiencing this persecution, and he's here saying, "Hey, greatly rejoice." And this is just for a little while. The suffering that we're doing is just for a little while, because we're going to have eternity where suffering isn't going to be a part of a thing. Persecution isn't going to happen at all, and these have come. These trials have come so that the that the proven genuineness of your faith, to prove persecution comes, and we see who is really a Christian. Because when you think about it, when it's easy to be a Christian, people are going to say, "Oh yeah, I'm Christian," even though they're not. But when it gets hard, you either throw in the towel and you say, "Oh, I'm not a Christian," or you get really serious about your faith because someone is persecuting you for it. And so I thought that's very interesting. And suffering in general is something that Christ did, and that he is an example for us. Um, Now I'm drawing a blank on the verse here. Um, he says again in chapter 4, but rejoice inasmuch as you participate in the sufferings of Christ, so that you may be overjoyed when his glory is revealed. Verse 14, if you are insulted because of the name of Christ, you are blessed, for the Spirit of glory and God rests on you. So we are blessed whenever we are persecuted, whenever we're going through trials and sufferings.
Yeah, we don't really very often see that as a blessing, but it's kind of, I kind of think about it in a practical story. Um, Maybe not something specifically that happened to me or anyone that I know or anyone that I don't know, but like a very a practical thing that could happen. Let's say as a parent, you have a child in a school system that you are not agreeing with how things are going on. In that context, when you push back to things that are going on that you don't approve on based off of your own biblical beliefs, and there's backlash, that backlash is good, because this is the two forces fighting. This is God and evil converging. And if you are completely living your life making everybody happy, and you're not disappointing anybody, and I don't want to just put this blanket statement over that, because there can be seasons of that where that is really the case. But if you're not challenging things that people say, we live in a very sinful world. If you're not challenging some of the things that people say, you're not going to be receiving any pushback. And so I would wonder if you're even really speaking the truth by holding back. And so, one verse that comes to mind when you're talking about suffering, and obviously this is a very common verse, but count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for these are the testing of your faith, and it produces steadfastness. Or perseverance is another word for that. That's in James 1, 2 and 3. And we know that suffering is temporary, like you said. Suffering is to be expected, and we are supposed to praise in our suffering. And we know that it is not for nothing. Like it produces more fruit than us. I was talking to a guy the other day, and we were talking about kind of the trap of comfortability, or I don't even know if that's a word, but being comfortable, and how that worked itself out in his life. Like we weren't even necessarily talking about spiritual in a spiritual sense, just more just how like being comfortable in life. He said like one thing for me, it was something really simple, and this is definitely not a Jesus thing. This is just a personal thing. But he's like, I just started taking cold showers. Like it was something so insignificant, but it was something that was challenging. And I think you can probably draw some parallels to suffering in that, like in that sense, you are bringing the cold shower. It represents the suffering, and it is kind of, if you ever taken a cold shower, you know, for us Americans who live in warm water culture, like that is suffering because of how comfortable our lives are. So like when, if you think of that as the suffering, it's like we're willingly accepting that, but we are doing it because we know that it's temporary, and we're doing it because we know that there is a payoff, and we're doing it because we know it's good for us. Like our Heavenly Father told us to rejoice in this, and our Heavenly Father told us to be rejoice in our sufferings. And I mean, he said these words through his different people that he used to write the Bible. And so, you know, as a general rule, when God tells you to do something, you do it. And it's amazing. It's amazing what simple things God can teach you, and what you can take from it.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And in our Western culture, suffering isn't the norm. And so whenever we start to suffer, we're like, oh, God, why me? Like, why am I suffering? And everybody else in the world is like, we've been suffering for a while now, and it's okay because this suffering produces faith, produces perseverance, and all this stuff. But we're always like, God, why me? But it's just because we're not used to it. In other cultures, they're used to it, and so it doesn't like they know how to suffer well. Us, as in our Western society, we don't know how to suffer well. We wallow in self pity. Speaking from personal experience here,
Yeah.
we wallow in self pity and think, oh, my goodness, like I just can't believe like that I'm going through this right now. I'm just gonna doom scroll for a while and then eventually get my stuff done. And that's like, no, why am I reaching for my phone instead of reaching out to God as my first instinct whenever I'm suffering? And that's not suffering well. It's not lamenting well.
Yeah, I just want to kind of expand on one thing that you said, um, and one thing that's very important is like these sufferings, this struggle that we are talking about, like responding to poorly. I know I can speak for myself, and I certainly can feel pretty comfortable in speaking for Max in this, that we do not always respond properly to that. Like going through hardship, that it's very easy to fall into the temptation of turning to everything but God. And they might not even be things that are necessarily sinful in themselves, but the fact that we are using them as a supplement rather than turning to God is sinful, because we are finding worldly peace in our worldly things for an issue that is so much bigger than this world. Like these issues were specifically placed for us to deal with, to grow our perseverance, and God is using them as the testing of how our faith is going to hold up in through these different trials. And He is wanting us to turn to Him, to turn to His Word. He gives us, I really see that He gives us three things. And there's, you can maybe come up with more, but these three things I think pretty much catch it all. But first of all, He gives us His Word to turn to. He's given us all the answers to everything we will need in His Word. The second thing He gives us is His Spirit, who we have access to the Father through that Spirit, for our prayers, for our laments being like our cries of outrage, essentially, where we are in agony or pain because of something that happened to us, and we're talking to God, like, why is this happening? So He gives us His Spirit, and I think the third thing He gives us is His people. He gives us as people not to, if it involves multiple people, not to gossip about this issue. But he gives us his people to support us. And even sometimes when you have people in your life, there's certain people who you feel comfortable sharing more with or specific things with. Even if they don't know the full extent of what is going on, he gives us their presence to be there in that hard time. And if nothing else, just get our mind off of our own self-loathing. Because I mean, all that, sometimes these negative thoughts that pop into our head, all that it is a hyper awareness of our own thoughts. So to put that simply, is just continuing to think about this thing that is this suffering, this trial, just continuing to think about it, breaking it down, and living in that constantly wears down on you. Like, trust me, I know, I've done it. And so God gives us his people to either talk about it or to just have a presence in our life to help get our mind off of it, and just give us some relief from that thing.
Yeah, when we focus on the problem, it's going to seem really, really big. And when we focus on Jesus, that problem's going to seem really, really small. So it's just kind of a highlighting thing. Yeah, it's kind of relates to sin in a way. In the Greek, I think trials and temptations are the same Greek word. And so, they can go either way. And it kind of reminds me of, like, if I'm focusing on, hey, I'm not going to sin, I'm not going to sin, I'm not going to sin, we're going to end up sinning. And when we say, hey, I'm tempted, or I'm going through this trial, and if we focus on that trial, that temptation, our mind's gonna go that way, even if it's in like a negative light. But we need to focus on Jesus instead of saying, I'm not gonna sin, I'm gonna follow what Jesus told me to do, or follow what God told me to do. And so that's just kind of a thoughting thing. But
yeah, just to kind of wrap up, whatever. Just the biggest thing that God has taught me is to turn to him in no matter what the circumstance. And I think that's just kind of a overarching theme of everything that we've been talking about. Give our trials, our tribulations to him. But also don't forget the opposite of that. Give our joys and our rejoicing to him when things go well. And so just turning to God in every single circumstance. And yeah. Can't go wrong doing that.
Nope. You literally cannot go wrong doing that. So, well, it's good to be back, honestly.
Yeah, man.
Kind of
I missed you.
To be here. Yeah, Keith and I haven't talked for actually a little while. So,
yeah.
No, it's been good. I hope you guys, as a basic family, are doing well. Reach out to us, email us, text us, call us if you have our phone number. Tell us hi. Tell us anything we can be praying for. And we're not going to big shot you. We're not that famous. We're not, if you send us email, we'll respond.
Oh, I do have a story. I was recognized for the first time in public. They're like, "Are you that guy from that podcast?"
They said, "Are you that chubby guy from Christian Campfire Conversations?"
That's insane.
I'm just kidding.
And he walks up. I'm at a campfire, no less, standing around a campfire, not having a conversation. I wasn't
there. So.
Yeah, Max wasn't there. I was being antisocial, and I was just like, I'd been talking all day. I'm like, I'm just going to stare at this campfire a while and just let my brain reset. You know, the very social people will know what the feeling is like. And so I was doing that, and this guy walks up to me, and I could see he's approaching me, and I'm like, hey, it's like, oh, are you that guy from Christian Campfire Conversations? And I'm like, no. And I was like, oh, no way. This is so crazy. Like, this never been recognized in public before. Wow, this is insane.
Keegan was like, yeah, I'll give you an autograph.
Yeah, okay, where should I sign? Okay, yeah, back of the line, buddy. But anyway,
no picture, please.
Yeah, no picture. Please don't post that. Yeah, I don't want my Addy getting leaked.
Please don't tag me.
I would hate that. But anyway,
Anyway, sorry.
he knew Max's sister through college, and he's like, I listen to your podcast. I put it up on my little Spotify, and so I see your face right there. I'm like, that's when I recognized you, and I said, oh, and he said it was the mustache. That's what he recognized.
You mean the two mustaches?
Shut
The
up,
bottom eyebrows, or what?
dude. The funny thing was, did I tell you what Hezekiah said?
Hezekiah is Keegan and I's nephew, by the way.
Keegan, yeah, so he does call him Uncle Max, not biologically, but yes. We were walking. He called me on my birthday, and I'm walking into my house, and I like had the phone down here, and he's like, eyelash, or eyebrow. He was talking about my mustache. Just like, oh man, you're too honest. But anyway, that's enough yapping. That's
That's right. Hey, thanks, Basic Family. Thanks for listening. It's gonna be back. Hopefully, we'll be back more frequently than what we have been in the last 2 months, which is absolutely zero. So the bar is pretty low. Peace out, Basic Family.